I thought that we had done it. That we had the team that would finally be crowned Super Bowl champions. And we were one drive away from accomplishing that. We came so close to a Super Bowl in the 2027 season. And in 1 year's time, we went from being so close to a Super Bowl title to head coach A.J. Ray being fired after a failure of an 8-9 season. The Raiders decide it's time to go in a new direction. This was a team that had Super Bowl expectations, and we couldn't meet those. Even with a late 5-game winning streak trying to get us back into the playoffs. Denzel Stockton had perhaps the worst year of his career other than his rookie season, only throwing 19 touchdowns and taking a huge step back from his breakout 2027 year. This offense was spectacular in our run to the Super Bowl, and I felt like running it back would only mean it would get even better. And we all know that was not the case. Even the defense took a step back with a pass rush that became one of the most overrated in football. Ramon Hayes earned his 5-year, $100 million extension with a strong start to the year after signing that contract. In week 4, he would record 1 sack the entire rest of the year. This was an utter, complete team failure. Outside of Michael Farrell, it seemed like everyone took a step back. And when a team like this peaks and there are Super Bowl expectations and you have an embarrassing season like this is where you end up. A.J. Ray has been fired. The 49ers and Baltimore Ravens would eventually meet up in the Super Bowl, a 1-seed versus 7-seed matchup, and the favorites win it. San Francisco 28-14. They get another title. And the Raiders' pursuit of a championship would now be going in a new direction. And I wanted to know what would be next for A.J. Ray after the Raiders move on from him. Well, the Denver Broncos filled their opening with Glenn Powers, and every other team filled their head coaching spot, and nobody reached out to A.J. Ray. The Raiders hired veteran coach Brent Perkins with a career win percentage of 45%. A.J. Ray didn't get offered at any point during the course of the offseason, and this meant the end of his head coaching career. Shockingly, I thought he'd for sure get an opportunity elsewhere, maybe Denver with their opening, and that would have been a sweet opportunity. Instead of having a chance to maybe go up against these Raiders, now all that's left is to see what they do from afar. I decided we would take the year off and watch what the Raiders do without us. Maybe they had to go in a new direction to reach that next level. And I was genuinely curious, what would the Raiders even attempt to do? Denzel Stockton's contract was up coming off a very bad season. The Raiders were at a crossroads, and they decided they would apply the franchise tag to Denzel Stockton, giving them 1 more year to figure it out. They'd also re-signed Josh Jacobs, Rashad Bateman, Colton Miller, and Hunter Jordan, along with Andre James, essentially keeping everybody together, but making a key change at head coach. Picking at 15 in the NFL draft, the Raiders would boost their offensive line and then address edge rusher and safety. Mike Coleman was their first-round pick, a 22-year-old guard with normal development who would be able to step into an immediate starting role. Their second-round pick was Keyshawn Tolliver, a raw pass rusher from USC, who would not be nearly ready to step into early playing time. It wasn't a very exciting draft class, and the Raiders didn't do a lot in free agency because re-signing all their players basically meant the team wasn't going to change much. This is essentially last year's team, plus Mike Coleman now at left guard. They did lose Anthony Clinton in free agency, meaning Taylor Seymour would get more playing time, and they did sign Reed Blankenship to play strong safety. I wanted to know where Anthony Clinton went, and I was shocked to see he wound up in Atlanta, but on a one-year contract for $2 million. Here's a guy that led us in receiving last year and has grown a lot over the course of this franchise, and he didn't even get an offer during free agency. He didn't sign until preseason. So the Raiders didn't change much, essentially saying the coaching staff is going to maximize this roster better than we were able to. So I sat back wanting to see how this season would unfold for the Raiders and would they have success under new head coach Brent Perkins. Here's their first game of the season against the vaunted Kansas City Chiefs. They would quickly score an opening drive touchdown. Patrick Mahomes finds Brian Keenan for 6. And that sets the stage for Denzel Stockton trying to put last season behind him after only 19 touchdowns. His first throw of the year is an interception by Nick Bolton. What a start to the Brent Perkins era. Chiefs take over. Patrick Mahomes spins around, fires a dart downfield to Rashee Rice, and a couple plays later, Isaiah Pacheco makes it a 14-0 Kansas City lead. Remember the days of us having the Chiefs number? Well, it appears the Raiders have lost it. A second interception for Nick Bolton, already 2 for Stockton in the first quarter of the season. Michael Farrell would keep the Chiefs from adding on any more and trying to give the offense a chance to get their footing. And Stockton is intercepted again, this time by Trent McDuffie. Chiefs would take a 21-3 lead. As we jump ahead later, a big catch and run. That's Tyrese Chambers all the way down to the 5-yard line. Chambers now in his 3rd season. Stockton then floating to the end zone. A good ball to Drew Keller, who somehow only scored 1 touchdown in the previous year. The Raiders make it an 11-point game. In the second half, another interception for Stockton. 2 for Bolton and 2 for McDuffie. Denzel Stockton is intercepted 4 times in his season debut. And that gives Patrick Mahomes the chance to build up a big lead and blow out the Raiders here in the season opener. Later in the game, an 18-point lead. Up top, that is caught for a touchdown by Sean Gaffney. The Chiefs go on to win this game. Final score, 42-24. It is an embarrassing start to the Brent Perkins era, and an atrocious performance by Denzel Stockton, getting intercepted 4 times. This season would go on to begin emulating some of the early seasons in this franchise, with the Raiders having a very inconsistent stretch of games. They'd have performances where Stockton has 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, the kind of games you expect of a franchise quarterback. And they'd be followed up with stinkers like this, where Stockton is sacked 6 times while completing 11 for 24. But as we've seen in the past, there would eventually be one of those big games for Stockton. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, with a young rookie running back filling in for an injured Josh Jacobs, by the way. This caught my attention. Jacobs was out, so insert 7th-round rookie Tyquan McClellan. The Raiders drafted a hidden dev running back in the 7th round without me. They beat me at my own game. They're trying to rub it in after the firing. I have to say, I am very impressed. But what's really key here is the cycle repeating itself. Denzel Stockton has a series of inconsistent performances, but then has one of those career-defining performances, one of those flawless franchise quarterback games. And you wonder, is this the real Denzel Stockton? Can we come to expect this week in and week out? After a 3-3 start, that happens again. And Denzel Stockton goes out and stomps New England 28-10 with 4 more touchdowns, no interceptions. Just a great performance. Picks up for a weak running game. Rashad Bateman, Tyrese Chambers go off. It's looking like a totally different year for Denzel Stockton. 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. What comes next? A 5-year, $250 million contract. We all wondered, would this day come? Eventually, it does. Stockton earns the long-term deal from the Raiders, and he's now one of the highest paid quarterbacks in football. And he's starting to get on a roll. The Raiders opened inconsistently, but then found themselves at 4-3 with a lot of momentum. Could you trust this team going forward? The hype train has left the station again for Denzel Stockton. And their next game would be their rematch with the Kansas City Chiefs. Entering at 4-3 with the Chiefs at 6-1, already winning one of the head-to-heads, this was a must-win game for the Raiders to win this division. Let's go early in this ball game. After 4 interceptions in the first matchup, Stockton deep downfield. He hooks up with Taylor Seymour. A beautiful 53-yard touchdown. The Raiders strike first. Later in the game, 7-3. And here is Sean Gaffney, one of my favorite players, I gotta say, here with the Chiefs. He's a 6'6", 196-pound receiver, and he can play. And so can Patrick Mahomes as he takes off right up the middle for a 15-yard touchdown, and Kansas City takes the lead. Now, we go to the fourth quarter of this ball game. It's a 24-21 game. Much more competitive this time around. Stockton on the money for Tyrese Chambers. No interceptions yet to this point for Stockton. 2nd and 7. Back across the middle and finds Chambers again. Great to see the growth of Tyrese Chambers and him becoming more of a complete receiver. Now on 3rd down, it's hard to see what really happens here, but Bateman apparently does not make the catch, and that would lead to a game-tying field goal. 24 all, 7 minutes left. Mahomes across the middle, and that's Sean Gaffney on the reception. A few plays later, Raiders force a 3rd and 9, and they make the play. Jalen Johnson forces that ball out, and it leads to a field goal for KC. The kicker is Jake Cassidy, and his kick winds up no good. Chiefs unable to break the tie, and we go ahead later in the game. 2:20 left to go. Chiefs football, and here is Isaiah Pacheco with a big run. Deeper into Raider territory, now at the 30. Chiefs trying to put together the game-clinching drive, but Ramon Hayes makes the play to force 4th down. Cassidy handles the shorter kick with ease, giving the Raiders some time to at least try and tie this game up. With a minute left to go, Denzel Stockton with time. Dumps it incomplete. We have 4th down, game on the line. What does Stockton do in this gotta-have-it situation? He finds Tyrese Chambers. He's across midfield. Now the Raiders have to at least get in field goal range, and Drew Keller takes care of that. They bring out Cole Winter, 52 to tie it, and he hits the kick, and we go to overtime. A very different game here in the rematch, but the Chiefs win the toss. They come out, first play of overtime, caught by Gaffney again, flying up the numbers to the 44. They get into Raider territory, and on 1st down, caught again by Sean Gaffney. No answer from this secondary. 17 yards out, and up the middle goes Pacheco. Goal to go, Kansas City. A touchdown would mean Stockton would never touch the football. Down to the 1 on this toss. And then Patrick Mahomes on the keeper wins it in walk-off fashion for the Chiefs. They sweep the Raiders, move to 7-1, and essentially end the hopes that the Raiders could possibly win the division this season. This put them with a tiebreaker 4 games behind the best team in the AFC. At least this was a much better game for Denzel Stockton, but there are no moral victories when you sit here at 4-4, knowing first place is essentially out of reach. Miami then defeats the Raiders in the following week. Only 10 points from the offense, and the Raiders fall under 500, getting gashed by the Miami run game. At 4-5, they would meet the Denver Broncos in Week 10. It appeared that Denzel Stockton's hype had once again died down. He wasn't playing badly, but he wasn't playing well enough to elevate the team that now sat at 4-5. And Denver would blow out the Raiders in the next game. Stockton 10 for 24. 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Raiders fall to 4-6. Knowing their next game would be a must-win game, Denzel Stockton did play much better in a strong Raiders win. And they would win their following game as well against Washington. And the credit for this win would go to the defense, sacking Stephen Thurston 4 times, intercepting him once, not allowing a passing touchdown. The Raiders were back at 500 as they hit their bye week, with 5 games left to go. They had a lot of work to do, but they had a chance. And Denzel Stockton had been putting together a pretty strong statistical year. There were definitely some poor performances in the first dozen games, but Stockton's numbers looked good for most of the year. Rashad Bateman was having a big bounce-back season. Taylor Seymour had broken out as the new third receiver, and the pass rush was in much better form, with Jaden Perkins already notching 7 sacks and earning that contract that we gave him a couple years earlier in the franchise. But there was a lot for the Raiders to still try and accomplish. At 7-6, coming off a win against New York, giving them 3 wins in a row. This would be one of their most important games left on the schedule. The loser would fall into 4th place in the division. A 17-14 game in the second half, with the Raiders up 1. Drew Keller puts the football on the ground, and the Chargers take possession. 3 minutes to go in the third quarter. Justin Herbert almost loses the football. Big play from Max Crosby. And on the very next snap, the Raiders dial up the pressure, and Devin White brings down Herbert to end this drive. Raiders still up 3. Fourth quarter, Denzel Stockton with time. Throws a dart at Chambers. He cannot hold on to it. This game would stay close at 17-14. A few minutes later, at their own 11-yard line, here's a 2nd and 21, and Rashad Bateman turns a simple dump off into a 24-yard catch and run, getting that conversion. Then the Raiders, with a new set of downs, have Stockton finding Keller on the outside. That brings them closer to field goal range. At the 4-minute mark, 3rd and inches. It's incomplete for Taylor Seymour. Brings up a 4th down. Raiders leave the offense on the field. And Stockton drives the pass downfield, and it's poked away from Tyrese Chambers. The Chargers take over on downs. 3.5 minutes left to go in the ball game. And Herbert finds Isaiah Likely open, who had 2 touchdowns against us in the first meeting of the year. The Chargers make their way down into field goal range, but a 3rd down stop would get them off the field. The Chargers and kicker Daniel Carlson tie the game at 17. It would be a long shot for the loser of this game to make the postseason. The Raiders, with their season essentially on the line. 2 minutes left, fitting this into Keller. Impressive throw from Stockton. Trying to get into field goal range to at least kick a field goal. Stockton finds Tyrese Chambers. He's making all kinds of tough plays he wasn't making as a rookie. And on 3rd and 7, they keep it on the ground, and Jacobs makes the field goal a bit easier. And it's one of the biggest kicks in the young career of Cole Winter. From 50 plus, he drills it. Raiders take the lead, 20-17. Chargers left with only 25 seconds, have to go a long way. Pressure by Crosby nearly ended things right there. Would the Chargers be able to give Carlson a chance? 15 seconds left, more pressure. Herbert desperately throws it out of bounds. The Chargers now met with a 4th and 10. Have to convert, and they do. That's Bobby Wise. And that would leave them with time for one final play. Justin Herbert, feeling the pressure, gets away and fires out of bounds as the Raiders win this game, improving to 8-6 on the year and avoid falling into last place. It was a nice game for Denzel Stockton, a good team victory against a good division opponent, and it gave them a 4th consecutive win. 330 yards, 2 more touchdowns. At the very least, the scheme change with the offense did seem to be paying off. And the Raiders had played themselves back into the playoff picture. They would make it 5 consecutive wins, defeating Philadelphia the next week in another low-scoring game. They had to win these games as a team. Run the football well, play good defense, protect the ball on offense, and you can stack these wins. That formula brought them to 9-6. The defense would stay hot in their win over Buffalo, winning 30-10. Josh Allen no longer in Buffalo, by the way, and the Raiders get 2 more interceptions, another signature performance, and they cap the season off with a 7th consecutive win. Over this win streak, they only allowed 14.1 points per game. It reminded me a lot of our Super Bowl run 2 years prior. We play middle-of-the-pack football for a long time, and then we start to figure things out. We play well as a team very consistently. And the Raiders had put themselves back into the playoffs, but now as the 6th seed because of being swept by the Kansas City Chiefs. Denzel Stockton bounced back the way everybody wanted him to. 34 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, meaning he only threw 2 after that first Kansas City game. He threw as many interceptions in the first quarter of Week 1 as he did Weeks 2 through 18. Josh Jacobs may not be the player he once was, but he did post 1,081 yards with a 4.2 yard average. Rashad Bateman back over 1,100 yards for the 4th time as a Raider. And Taylor Seymour arguably had a better season than Tyrese Chambers. Max Crosby, 17.5 sacks. Jaden Perkins had 8. Michael Farrell had a fantastic season again. And Jalen Johnson has been one of the most consistent players in the entire series. The Raiders were back in the postseason after 1 year away. A lot of success under head coach Brent Perkins. But now in the postseason, the only thing that'll satisfy this fan base is a Super Bowl victory. And they would have to begin their journey on the road in the wildcard round against a team that already beat them. And Miami would lead 17-0 at the half. Denzel Stockton only had 36 first-half passing yards, with Josh Jacobs having 8 rushing. Meanwhile, Jalen Waddle, 7 catches, 104 yards, and a touchdown. It was all Miami. Would the Raiders be able to respond in the second half? We go into the opening drive of the third quarter. Tua goes empty, fires outside, gets intercepted, and that's Alex Ramsey, who breaks a tackle and takes off all the way down to the 2. The Raiders and their defense had come a long way. Alex Ramsey finally gave them a spark, and they would run in a touchdown with Josh Jacobs to get on the board and try to reset this game. Now only a 10-point ball game. Tua Tagovailoa right back to the air, downfield, and wide open is Tutu Atwell. Their number 2 across of Jalen Waddle these days. On second down, another open look for Tutu inside the 30. This Raider defense hadn't given up more than 20 points in any game on their 7-game win streak. And here's Tua running up the hashes for a big gain. It just doesn't seem like that same defense anymore. But on first down, pressure arrives and down goes Tua. There's Ramsey in the backfield once again. Raiders back up Miami, and Tua attempts a jump pass on the screen and gets laid out. Risky play. Miami adds a field goal. We have a 20-7 game. And the Raiders desperately needed their offense to get going. But Stockton is pressured and sacked, forcing a long third down. Backed up at their own 18, and Stockton can't even get the screen pass complete. The offense is in complete disarray. And Stockton still only had 36 passing yards. Miami football, 3rd and 14. Tua lets it fly. Tutu Atwell. He seems to be always open. Miami into the red zone, 3rd and 6. Tagovailoa knocked away in the end zone by Reed Blankenship. Miami would add 3 more, and the Raiders were running out of time. Down 16, handoff, Jacobs, and there's finally a big lane. He runs for more on this carry than he did his first 8 of the ball game. Next play, Stockton intercepted, not seeing the underneath defender, and it's taken away by Miami. That's the last thing this team could afford. But we go into the fourth quarter, 23-7, Stockton off the mark. 5 of 13, 36 yards passing. He had 0 in the third quarter. What is going on here? This might be the worst offensive showing in the entire Denzel Stockton era. Miami 23-7 trying to end things, and the Raiders defense trying to keep him in this game, but they cannot recover the loose football. 4th and 1 for Miami later in the drive. They toss it out, and here is Achan. First down, Dolphins running more time off the clock. They would take it down into the red zone where Tagovailoa with time fires a strike to Manny Buchanan, and the Raiders are blown out of the wild card round. I couldn't believe it. You win 7 games in a row. For this, possibly the lowest moment of the series. This is how Denzel Stockton would end his year, with another playoff meltdown. We're talking about a game you could argue is the worst of his career when you adjust for the stage. To play like this in the wild card round after winning 7 games in a row in a season where Stockton was an MVP candidate. And that's how it ends. Numbers look a little bit better by the end thanks to some garbage time, but he had 36 passing yards going into the fourth quarter. And thus concludes the latest ride aboard the Stockton coaster in the Raiders franchise. I spent a year not controlling any aspect of this roster. Could they take it further without me? Ultimately, this season was a failure. It took a 7-game win streak just to make the playoffs, and then they lose in the opening round in embarrassing fashion. You don't make this kind of money at quarterback to go one and done. Stockton was not named a Pro Bowler, nor did he win any awards. Stockton has now played 6 years. He has made the Pro Bowl 1 time, and that is his only accolade next to a $250 million contract. Where do the Raiders go from here as they see their rivals in Kansas City claim another Lombardi trophy? Is it time for me to return and take over control of the Raiders once again? Because I'm very interested in the future of this franchise, especially with Stockton now on a contract this team has no easy way of getting out of. The core has gotten much older. Stockton's taking up a considerable portion of the cap space, and this team's going to experience a lot of change. I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to approach this episode. I'd love your feedback on what you thought of today's video and what you'd like to see next time. I figured if I made firing a possibility, well, I should at least have to take a year off from controlling this team to see how they do, right? Well, now what do? Leave your thoughts below in the comment section, and I'll definitely be back with more Raiders franchise. And do you think Denzel Stockton will ever win a ring?